For the last word with Lawrence O'Donnell. Good evening, Lawrence.
Good evening, Rachel. I have to say it was so great to see Jacob Soboroff tonight, where they are counting votes in Los Angeles. And there's so many fascinating points about what he was showing us, including the glass walls. All the walls are glass. It literally could not be more transparent. And the fact that Donald Trump's U.S. attorney has been down there with other U.S. attorneys just walking through the place shows you just how open it is. They didn't see anything, obviously, that they thought should be stopped or should be investigated on the spot or any such thing. And so the count continues. And I just can't, I'm really glad Jacob's show is premiering this weekend while they will still be counting votes in Los Angeles. We need his show now. It's just the perfect launch period for it to go straight into his expertise about that vote counting in California.
It is also just amazing, Lawrence, that, you know, in advance of the vote, not just this vote, but every time there's a vote in California, right? But in particular with this one, everybody says there's official pronouncements. Everybody reporting on this in the news says in advance, it's going to take weeks to count. It will be weeks before we have the results here. They will not get complete results until 30 days after Election Day. We all know in advance that's what's going to happen. It's explicit. That's part of the process. That's what happens when the process works properly. And still, Republicans think that people are going to fall for it when they say, as soon as their candidates look like they're going to lose, that the length of the counting process is somehow indicative of some sort of problem. I mean, these sorts of bad faith attacks on the integrity of our elections really, really do depend on the idea that people are stupid. And when people palpably are not stupid, and when people actually pay attention, and when stuff actually works the way it's supposed to, I think these claims that they're making end up not only not working, but really embarrassing and potentially scandalizing, I think, the people who they're talking down to. So, I mean, we'll see how this goes. We'll see if they're able to actually scare people about these results. But you know, we'll see what happens tomorrow with their Republican candidate in the governor's race. But I do think they're kind of stepping on a rake here.
And you see, Republicans in California don't do this. They're not the ones coming out saying these elections are fraudulent. They know how votes are counted in California, and they are not happy that Donald Trump has convinced Republicans to avoid mail-in voting. Republicans used to do mail-in voting as much as Democrats, sometimes even more than Democrats. It's the most reliable way of voting. You never know. Something could happen. You could get a flat tire on Election Day on the way to the polling place. And so mail-in voting is the most reliable way. And Donald Trump has been campaigning against it. So no one is surprised, including Californians who know more Republicans vote on Election Day. Democrats do most of their voting through the mail. Therefore, when you're counting the mail-in ballots, which is what they're counting now, Democrats are going to do very well at that end of the count.
That's exactly right. And I think even more broadly than that, I think everybody knows Trump will claim any election that he loses or that a Republican loses is a rigged election. And everybody knows that. Even people who don't pay attention to politics know that. And so I sort of feel like he's kind of he's cried wolf at this point. You know, like I kind of feel like it just doesn't land the same way. There's nothing convincing about his eruptions around this stuff. It's all predictable, it's all foretold, it's all so according to the formula that he has been living by for the past 10 plus years that I don't think he's winning anybody over to this side of the argument anymore. I think everybody knows it's a bad faith claim. And that's a healthy, I think that's a healthy antibody for us to have as a democracy.
Rachel, thanks for starting us off this hour, and your vocal rest begins now.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Rachel. Thank you. Well, Paul Ryan shocked Washington when he became a congressional retiree at the ripe old age of 48 years old. He was by far the youngest Speaker of the House that any of us had ever seen before, and he was the first Speaker of the House who had to deal with Donald Trump in the White House. During Donald Trump's first presidential campaign, I was often amused at Donald Trump's craziest proposals and thought, wouldn't it be funny to see him get to the presidency and discover that the Speaker of the House is more powerful than he is? That the Republican Speaker of the House, Paul Ryan, can kill every one of those crazy Trump ideas. I didn't expect Donald Trump to make it to the White House, and I really didn't expect Paul Ryan to suddenly turn into the first cowardly Speaker of the House that we'd ever seen. Paul Ryan was on his way to a Republican nomination for president in the next election until Donald Trump won the Electoral College. Paul Ryan knew right away it was not his Republican Party that elected Donald Trump, and he obviously hated working with the most ignorant person who has ever occupied the White House. And so, just 15 months into Donald Trump's presidency, Paul Ryan announced that he would not run for re-election to Congress. The Speaker of the House announced he was quitting, not just the House, but it turns out he was quitting American politics, giving up, surrendering to Trumpism and quitting. Paul Ryan was as willing to twist facts to his advantage as anyone else in politics, but supporting Donald Trump's relentless, pathological lying became impossible for him. And so he quit that whole life. And now Donald Trump has a Republican Speaker of the House who has lied publicly more than any other Speaker of the House in history, because Donald Trump's Republican Speaker of the House has never disagrees with Donald Trump, who was tracked by the Washington Post telling more than 30,000 public lies during his first presidency. And today, Republican Speaker Mike Johnson joined Donald Trump's lie that last week's election in California was what Donald Trump calls a rigged election.
I think California is playing around with this.
But what evidence is there to prove that there was
Look, I don't. Some of these efforts are so diabolical and so far upstream that it's impossible to prove.
Impossible to prove. But he believes it. That's the kind of thing Paul Ryan would not have been able to say for Donald Trump. That's the kind of lie Paul Ryan couldn't tell. Mike Johnson is the first Speaker of the House to believe in election crimes that are happening on the other side of the country that are, quote, impossible to prove. His words, impossible to prove. What else does he believe in? Does he believe in the tooth fairy? What else does he believe in that is impossible to prove? It is, of course, most likely that Mike Johnson doesn't believe anything that he says or Donald Trump says about the California election. He's just lying for Donald Trump because he thinks that's his job. And as we explained to you last week, the day after the election in California, the Democrats won the governorship and the mayor of Los Angeles on election night. If you can do the math, it was right there in front of us. Enough votes had been counted that it was impossible for the Republican candidate to win the governorship or mayor of Los Angeles. And now, as the largest mail-in vote total in the country is being counted in the slow, careful process of individuals opening envelopes and with the human eye matching ballot signatures to registered vote signatures, the vote totals have changed in ways that change nothing at all for the possibility of a Republican doing the impossible in California and winning one of those offices. The first place winner in the primary for mayor of Los Angeles has not been in doubt since election night. Karen Bass has been holding steady with 34% of the vote. And now with 93% of the vote counted, Democrat Nithya Raman has increased her lead in what had been a very close race for second place with Donald Trump's chosen candidate, the utterly incompetent Spencer Pratt. Democrat Nithya Raman is now officially projected to be the second place winner, which means the November election for mayor of Los Angeles will be Democrat Karen Bass versus Democrat Nithya Raman. The national news media, not understanding the basic arithmetic of California elections and Los Angeles elections, has made the mistake of thinking that Donald Trump's candidate for mayor, a former reality TV clown, ever had a chance. Us Weekly went so far as to embarrass itself with this magazine cover, that I saw on sale at Los Angeles newsstands last week, where everyone in Los Angeles knew from the start that Spencer Pratt's destiny was loser. The mail-in ballots that are still being counted heavily skew toward Democrats, largely because Donald Trump has spent his entire political career telling Republicans not to vote by mail. And it used to be that there was no real distinction between Democrats and Republicans voting by mail in California. In fact, there was usually a slightly larger percentage of Republicans voting by mail in California until Donald Trump condemned that practice. Voting in the new electronic voting machines in California on Election Day gets your vote counted fast within the first 24 hours. Voting by mail means your vote is going to take much longer to count, and everyone knows that, and only Donald Trump lies about that. Not one Republican in California has ever tried to tell that same lie. Counting all the votes in Arnold Schwarzenegger's Republican victory in his governor's campaign took 5 weeks. And oh, by the way, counting all the votes in Mike Johnson's state of Louisiana also takes 5 weeks. That's how long it takes to count all the votes. And in Mike Johnson's state of Louisiana, in the last presidential election, they had to open a grand total of 119,000 envelopes for mail-in ballots. 119,000 in the entire state of Louisiana. At the same time that California was opening 13 million envelopes to count the mail-in ballots. 13 million. As long as he can breathe, Donald Trump will lie about elections, as he did in this weekend's taped Meet the Press interview, which led to him pulling off his microphone and lumbering out of the interview after Kristen Welker told him there was no evidence of a rigged election in California, explaining, quote, that's how they vote. That's how they count votes in California. To which Donald Trump, uncouth vulgarian that he is, said, you're either crooked or you're stupid. Everyone watching that interview knows that she is neither and he is both. And so the crooked, stupid man who couldn't stop lying stalked out of the interview, which was the only way Donald Trump's lying about elections was going to stop in that kind of situation. He lied about the people who attacked the Capitol on January 6, 2021 to try to overturn a presidential election in a conspiracy against the United States of America for Donald Trump. And he refused to say if the people who tried to kill police officers that day should be paid for their crimes by American taxpayers.
Do you think anyone who attacked police officers on January 6th should get taxpayer money?
I wouldn't be inclined to say so, but I have to see it.
Oh, he has to see it. It's a simple no. For any politician, for any sane person, that question is a simple no. Do you think anyone who attacked police officers on January 6th should get taxpayer money? What other answer is there except no? And Donald Trump says, I have to see it. So Donald Trump would, I guess, sit in the Oval Office or in a golf cart somewhere and look at a video of these people trying to kill this police officer and decide which of those violent criminals should be given taxpayer money. And he might decide that all of them who were trying to kill that police officer for Donald Trump deserve taxpayer money. He did decide that all of them deserved to be pardoned, Every single person who tried to kill that police officer has been pardoned by Donald Trump, everyone. And once again, Donald Trump proved that the only way he knows how to talk about his war is to lie.
What changed? Because you insisted no new wars.
First of all, I didn't guarantee no war.
Here is the lying Donald Trump on election night in 2024.
They said, he will start a war. I'm not going to start a war. I'm going to stop wars.
Donald Trump failed the simplest cognitive test in that interview, which was the question, what is a war?
Is the United States at war with Iran?
Well, they've been largely decapitated, and I call it a military exercise because people would rather have it called that. It's not a big war for us. It's not. I don't consider that a war, but if you want to define it as such, I guess you can.
Well, how do you define it?
I don't define it at all. I don't think about it.
Doesn't think about it. Doesn't define it. Doesn't know what a war is. And then Donald Trump repeatedly referred to his war in Iran as a war. After saying it's not a war, he kept saying it was a war, and he kept comparing it to other American wars.
We've lost 13 people here, and that's a lot. 13 people too many. But if you look at Vietnam, where hundreds of thousands of people were killed.
What an abject ignoramus. That is so painful. Donald Trump obviously has no idea how many Americans were killed in the war in Vietnam that he managed to avoid by getting a doctor's letter saying that the feet that he spent the rest of his life playing golf on just weren't capable of ever wearing combat boots. Donald Trump thinks hundreds of thousands of Americans were killed in Vietnam. It's a horrible number, the real number, because their deaths accomplished nothing. And Vietnam won its war against the United States of America, won that war unconditionally, and we lost. We also lost 58,220 Americans who were killed in Vietnam. 58,220 American families attended those funerals. I attended one of those funerals when I was in high school, and I learned then, I knew then, that the United States of America could not win every war and should never fight a war like that again. But Donald Trump obviously learned nothing, including how many Americans were killed in Vietnam. He lied repeatedly about what has been accomplished by his war and what he hopes to accomplish. He claims he's hoping to accomplish something that has never been accomplished before, when in fact, President Obama did exactly what Donald Trump is desperately hoping to do now.
They've conceded the fact that they will not have nuclear weapons. We had a clause in there that we will not develop nuclear weapons, and everybody was very happy with it except me. And I said, well, what happens if they not develop, but they go out and purchase, they acquire? I want to put the word, if they buy or purchase or acquire, you've got to have that in there too, because that's not developing. So they don't have the right to develop or purchase, acquire, or buy.
Acquire. Wow, okay, acquire. That's a good thing to add. He said it 3 times. As I have read to you many times on this program now, in the detailed written agreement negotiated by Secretary of State John Kerry with President Obama's guidance and in partnership with 5 other countries who were in the negotiation, the United Kingdom, Germany, France, Russia, and China, Iran agreed to this statement in writing, which appears more than once in the document, including on page 3 of the agreement. Iran reaffirms that under no circumstances will Iran ever seek, develop, or acquire any nuclear weapons. And there's Donald Trump claiming that he's the genius who thought up the idea to say they cannot develop or acquire nuclear weapons from some other country. He thought that up. Those words are taken from the Obama agreement with Iran, which says, I repeat, Iran will never, quote, ever seek, develop, or acquire any nuclear weapons. That is the exact language Donald Trump now says he has not yet been able to negotiate with Iran. So Donald Trump's publicly admitting now, I cannot get Iran to agree to the sentence that John Kerry and President Obama got Iran to agree to. The John Kerry negotiated agreement included specific and intense, relentless, and unconditional inspections all over Iran of any facilities in the country that might be able to enrich uranium or in any way help develop nuclear weapons. It was the strictest inspections regime ever imposed on another country, and it was working. It was working. The United States and the other countries seeking to prevent Iran from obtaining a nuclear weapon did not trust Iran. So they got Iran's promise in writing, and then they got Iran's agreement that those countries could enforce that promise by sending their own inspectors into Iran wherever they wanted to go. Donald Trump has no chance at all, of getting an agreement with Iran that is as good as the agreement Secretary of State John Kerry and President Obama got in writing with Iran. But he has a plan for his failure to do that. It's the same plan Donald Trump has for his failure in the elections in California, where his endorsed candidate for mayor has already earned the status of loser, and that is to lie. That's Donald Trump's strategy. Donald Trump will never stop lying about American elections, and he will never stop lying about his war in Iran, which as of tonight, in its 101st day, has accomplished nothing. And every day, Donald Trump continues to find new ways to demonstrate that he is both crooked and stupid. Leading off our discussion tonight is Massachusetts Senator Ed Markey. Senator, there's Donald Trump pretending that John Kerry and President Obama didn't already negotiate exactly the words that he is hoping to get Iran to agree to, which he hasn't been able to get them to agree to yet.
John Kerry and Barack Obama ensured that the International Atomic Energy Agency would be able to go anywhere they needed to go in order to determine whether or not the Iranians were violating the nuclear agreement. And there was no evidence that they were doing so. And in fact, the Iranians were at least a year away from getting a nuclear weapon because of that full scope safeguards program, which John Kerry and Barack Obama negotiated. And so when Donald Trump pulled out of that agreement in 2017, he was triggering something that would ultimately result in Donald Trump himself in 2025 saying that he was going to go in to obliterate the nuclear program, and this year once again re-instigated an attack against Iran, all to put us back to where John Kerry and Barack Obama had us in the first place, but with no regime change and the Iranians controlling all of the oil going through the Straits of Hormuz with no likelihood for the rest of our lifetimes that they are going to give up that control. And we're already seeing $1.50 a gallon gasoline prices increase all across our country. And so, yes, John Kerry and Ernie Moniz, our Secretary of Energy, and Barack Obama, they deserve a Nobel Prize for what they did, because they had truly brought peace to that region.
Senator, I've never had the slightest hint that Donald Trump ever read a word of the agreement that Secretary Kerry negotiated. And when he goes into that interview saying things like he said, it seems very clear. He has no idea what was in the agreement that he ripped up.
He made a campaign promise, and he fulfilled it by destroying not just the Iran nuclear agreement, but also the Paris climate agreement. These were just pandering promises to his MAGA base, and in implementing those promises, he's endangered our planet from the threat of climate change, and he has also made the Middle East a volatile, bubbling, boiling cauldron that is much more dangerous than it was before Donald Trump was inaugurated as president in 2017, and it's even further accelerated now after his second inauguration last year, and there is no likelihood of there being an ability to put this genie back in the bottle again. We are going to be living with the consequences of this from a national security and economic perspective for the next almost impossible to determine infinity sign duration in the future.
Senator, thank you for reminding us of the environmental agreement that Donald Trump destroyed. There's just so much to keep track of here that I, for one, can't do it all. So I really appreciate you adding that element to it. Senator Ed Markey, thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Great to be with you. Thank you.
And coming up, Andrew Weissman will join us to consider the next violations of law Donald Trump plans to do publicly at the White House. That's next. Event at the White House.
What I think personally is that our government is desecrating its role in society by entertaining sports. Our government is to protect and serve the people, and really should be as minimal as possible. And when you're doing all of this stuff, hosting sporting events, it's really outside of what the goal of the government was intended to be, because our tax dollars and resources are funding this operation.
That is Bryce Mitchell showing more respect for the law and the White House than Donald Trump ever has. And a new lawsuit is attempting to block the commercial event from taking place on the White House South Lawn. The New York Times reports that the lawsuit is, quote, challenging what it called the night of cage fights that President Trump planned to hold at the White House as part of the celebration of the country's 250th anniversary. The case was filed just over a week before the event, which is scheduled for June 14th and is being organized by the Mixed Martial Arts Promotion Ultimate Fighting Championship. The lawsuit argues that the transformation of the grounds was never authorized by Congress and that the event will serve as an extraordinary use of government space to benefit both the chief executive of UFC, Dana White, and Mr. Trump, who is an investor in UFC's parent company. The lawsuit reads, this plan is deeply corrupt. The president giving Dana White and his company what none have enjoyed before, unfettered access to the White House and Lincoln Memorial to stage a private, for-profit sports event with all the promotional and branding opportunities that accompany such access. UFC's broadcast partner, Paramount Skydance, which is run by two other Trump allies, Larry and David Ellison, has decided that no American will be able to take in this celebration of America without first paying $8.99 plus tax for a Paramount Plus streaming subscription. Joining us now is Andrew Weissman, former FBI general counsel and an MSNOW legal analyst. He's author of the new book, Liar's Kingdom, How to Stop Trump's Deceit and Save America, which is now #1 on the New York Times bestseller list. Andrew, can this be stopped?
It can be stopped, but I have to say that I think this is not the strongest lawsuit, and for two reasons. One, there is a legal doctrine called standing, which is that you cannot have just a taxpayer, an everyday citizen, bring a lawsuit in this country. There needs to be some unique harm to the person bringing the lawsuit. I know for a lot of people listening to this, they may go, that seems very unfair. I'm not here to argue with that. I'm here to just say that is what's required. And so I think there's a real issue in this lawsuit about standing. there also is an issue about whether they will succeed on the particular legal claim. And so you have this oddity that everything you read seems pretty well supported. And there's the allegations that the plaintiff's bringing seem quite true in terms of the sort of for-profit motive, what they're doing to the White House. But the particular claim here is one that they have to show that this event is really a birthday celebration for the President of the United States and not a 250th anniversary of this country. And the reason is there's a congressional loophole that says that this can be done, it appears, if it is really about the 250th anniversary of this country. And so that is, of course, what the White House has been saying. Whether it's true or not is another matter, but I think it would be very hard for a judge, especially in this short time, to get to that point.
Andrew, we're going to have to squeeze in a commercial break here. On the other side of it, I want to ask you about Donald Trump now being investigated by a federal judge for possibly perpetrating a fraud on the court. We're going to be right back with Andrew Weissmann.